Hey folks, Fernando Jr. video for the Modern Survivalist, and in this video I'm going to be explaining how to sharpen a knife simply using your sharpening stone, some basic sharpening implements. It is a skill that you definitely should develop, you definitely should have, and I see lots of gimmicks, sharpening tools and levers and things or electric gadgets. You really have to know how to sharpen a knife with pretty much simple objects. If you know how to do this correctly, anything pretty much with a little bit of abrasive surface can be used to actually sharpen a knife. I've been sharpening knives for 30 years. I'm still getting there because it is a skill that you keep on developing as years go by, but it's basically about keeping the right angles, and that is really all there is to it. Sure, there's always a little bit more because even the most simple things has its little tricks and such, but basically sharpening a knife is all about this. You just have your blade, which has gone dull. If you look at the knife from kind of like that direction, right? Once this is dull, you need to remove material in that direction, you need to remove material in this direction, and basically when you get these angles right, you have a sharp edge. The angle is going to be between 15-20 degrees, give or take. I basically go by almost like feel by now because I'm kind of used to this. If you are just getting started, make sure that those angles aren't just too steep, because if not, it's not going to be sharp. So it is quite a bit about practice. There's a few things also in there when sharpening. Depending on the kind of steels, heat treatment and such, it is more or less likely that it will develop like a burr or a wire edge, and you kind of have, when you start removing materials on either side, there's a good chance you'll have a little bit of a burr, and you feel that when dragging your nail, or sometimes it's even visible, but if you just drag your nail, you'll be sharpening your knife for a while, and you'll go try to cut a bit of paper, and you'll see, man, this is just not working. There's a good chance that's happening. Just drag your nail, and if it's catching on something, that's probably it. If you're just getting started, there's a good chance that you're just not getting the angles right. This is all about sustaining the same angle one time over and over on both sides, and that's all there is to it. Even now, I still don't get it perfectly right on both sides when using some of these tools, but I always get a functional, sharp enough edge. This knife, I just sharpened it. It is, I'd say it's sharp enough. Not great or anything. One of the things that lets you know is cutting paper, and if you see that it's very cleanly cut, for example in this case, this knife is quite sharp. Look at how there's no fur, no nothing there on those edges. This is a pretty razor sharp knife. I could even shave with this thing pretty easily. So yeah, definitely a sharp knife because I just sharpened it. Now let's do the following. Let's actually dull this knife a little bit. I have a sharpening stone. Let's do this. So as to remove that sharpness, and it's already yeah, no big mystery here. When you just drag your knife like this across a sharpening stone, you're going to be killing the edge almost instantly, and it's sharp no more. As you see, it just doesn't get through, because that's the way it is, especially with a knife that is as thin as this one. This is a IKEA kitchen knife. It's a very thin blade, very wide as well, which is nice, but very thin. That means it's easy to sharpen, but it's gonna be losing its edge pretty fast as well, of course, especially if you drag it across a sharpening stone. Talking about sharpening implements and such, you want to avoid these Chinese cheapo stones like this one, which is super rough. It's mostly intended for like gardening tools, axes, that sort of thing, because for a knife it's a little bit too rough and you're going to be ending up with an edge that's not all that clean. I recommend getting a proper sharpening stone, not gimmicks, not levers and stuff like that. Just learn to sharpen with the right tools. This stone is 600 grit on one side, 1500 on the other. 600 is a good grit in general. I have it even in sample sandpaper, because you can use sandpaper to sharpen knives as well. You also have your typical butcher sharpening steel. One of the tools I use almost exclusively is this Victorinox sharpening ceramic rod. I'm already very much used to this, and with just a little bit of practice, with a little bit of a few minutes, I'll put a decent edge on pretty much anything, from a pocket knife to a larger blade. And this allows me to just use both hands. Again, getting the angle right every single time is the key, and that takes practice. Let's start using a sharpening steel like you see your butcher typically using. Gonna be doing like this, both sides, both angles. Just got caught there at first because definitely the sharpening stone put a bit of a, that's quite aggressive, that's messing up your edge very much. So what you're doing, this is a few things. You're wearing out, you're removing material, you're removing steel from both sides. You're also straightening that edge. If you look at this with a microscope, this is not perfectly, even a sharp knife is not going to be perfectly straight. So you have it like teeth, like just like that, different parts of the metal. Sometimes just aligning those a little bit better, because it is quite plastic. Just aligning that is going to be making for a sharp edge. And as you see, I'm going in the direction of the edge so as to reduce the chances of getting one of those wire edges or one of those burrs. At this stage, and with this type of tool, it's a good call. Let's see if I actually sharpen anything here by doing this. Right, and not so much of a great job. That was quite aggressive, and I need to remove more material. It's not as if I was just cutting a little bit of meat and just need to put a little bit more of a sharp bite there. I did quite a bit of damage with that stone, so I need to remove more material for that. A ceramic rod like the one I typically use will be more efficient. I mean, anything can be used. I mean, the 1500 grit will sharpen the knife. Actually, as I'm using this, which I'm very familiar with, I feel the edge being messed up and not being straight enough. You know, that's the kind of feel you develop when you use the same tool for many years, time and again. Now it's getting a little bit better. Of course, I have to be very cautious because this is a long blade and my hand is very close to the edge. But again, I'm kind of used to this thing, so usually it's pretty safe for me. The angle is key. Keeping the angle straight, right, every single time, being consistent with that. If you're consistent, even if the angle is not perfectly right, if you're consistent, you will get a sharp blade. Let's try it now and see if it's somewhat of a sharper. Okay, and we now start having more of a decent knife. This is why I like this little ceramic rod so much. It's just about the right grit in terms of removing material on either side. So you notice a difference. I was just cutting and that was pretty awful. Now it's actually cutting right out again without any issue. This is great, requires practice. I would suggest practicing and getting good with it, because as you just saw, it's something you can have in your pocket, in your bag, and just in a few minutes you will get good results. There's also the matter of knowing how to use a sharpening stone. Some of these use oil, some of these use water for lubrication. This one is can use both, but this is more intended for water. It soaks up, it's already soaked in water, so that's just soaking a little bit more, and going to be having a little bit of water there in the surface. This is already sharp. You can just do a few circles like this. Again, keeping the angle just about right on either side, and you keep working that for a few minutes. Of course, I'm doing this with my camera between my hands, which is far from ideal, so my angle is going to be a little bit off. No big deal. And once you do this with the 600 grit, you work on a little bit on the finer grit so as to get a finer edge. One of the things I like doing is using these nail polish boards. This is not a file. This is almost smooth on both sides. Basically, a very little bit of bite, but these are a buffing, nail polishing type of boards. You can get these in beauty stores, that sort of thing. And one of the things you do, because notice that once you sharpen your knife, if you actually take piece of paper and you drag it, you see what's happening there? All of that is just particles, sediments. This is not the stone. The stone is not this color. This is all metal. So when you buff and you polish those edges, one of the things you're doing besides removing just a little bit more material is you're removing some of those loose particles and grit that you just don't want on that edge, because it's going to be making it less efficient. So with a buffing board like this, or you can even use, typically you would use a leather belt with a little bit of polishing paste or something like that. These are super cheap, lightweight, and they last for years. They've had this one for a long time. So you're just polishing, buffing that edge, making it nicer and more even, and cleaning it as well, which is something that a lot of people don't realize. You're cleaning that edge, removing some of that gunk that is stuck in there, aligning some of those micro particles there, and that's how you end up with a pretty decent, nice, sharp knife. Folks, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Learn how to actually sharpen a knife without any gimmicks, any of the bullshit, which is fine. I mean, I have no problem with that, but I also feel you should learn how to properly sharpen a knife with pretty much any, stone or sharpening tool, simple ones that you may have around. Folks, remember to subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell button. Remember, you have my books available in Amazon, which I very much recommend, especially for everything that you're seeing right now. My last one, Street Survival Skills, you definitely want to get it. And Surviving the Economic Collapse, you'll likely find it useful as well for the times ahead. See you on our next video. Have an awesome weekend.